Your blazer looks like you bought it at a yard sale, Arwen Preston said, still admiring herself in the conference room window. I stayed silent. Silence is a weapon most people can't handle. It was 7:30 a.m. in a Chicago skyscraper that cost more per floor than my entire neighborhood. My name is Maisie Grant. 16 years in corporate finance. 3 recessions. 2 hostile takeovers. I'm the person they call when the numbers don't add up and the auditors circle like vultures. The cleanup crew. Today apparently I was the entertainment. Arwen, 26, fresh MBA bought with her father's donations, lime green pantsuit, jewelry worth a small nation's GDP, finally turned to me. Maisie, are you even listening? Lawrence expects premium presentation. You look like you're selling insurance door to door in 1974. The junior associates pretended to type. They knew I'd saved this company from collapse twice. But Arwen was the CEO's daughter, and bloodline beats competence 95% of the time. "My suit's fine, Arwen," I said evenly. "Lawrence Caldwell's flying in to decide whether to invest $3.5 billion. He cares about ROI, not hemlines." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so literal. This is about vibe. Daddy says I get to lead because I understand what modern investors want. You're just here to read spreadsheets." I looked at her, really looked. Desperate for validation. Terrified. Handed everything, learned nothing. Something inside me snapped. The last thread on a rope frayed for years. I was done carrying incompetence. Mason Reed, the CEO, swept in next, tan from shareholder-funded golf trips, teeth blindingly white. "Big day. Arwen, you look stunning. Maisie, you brought the binders." "I brought the data," I said. "Risk assessments, compliance, real projections." "Fantastic," he waved, pouring coffee. "Keep it out of sight for now. Don't drown Lawrence in numbers before Arwen paints the vision. We're selling the future." The past, he meant, was the 14 months I'd spent rebuilding after his crypto Ponzi scheme nearly sank us. "Mason," I warned, "Caldwell's been in institutional investing 30 years. If we open with vibes instead of data, he'll walk out before slide 2. Arwen groaned. "Daddy, she's being a buzzkill again." Mason gave me that patronizing smile that makes you crave arson. "Just be a team player, Maisie. Support her lead." Team player. Corporate code for shut up and accept mediocrity. I checked the clock. 7:48 a.m. Caldwell arrived in 12 minutes. "Understood," I said. And I meant it. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. I wouldn't interrupt. I wouldn't save them. I'd sit in my yard sale blazer and watch Arwen burn the meeting to the ground. I smoothed my binder, took a sip of water, and waited for the executioner to arrive. The conference room doors opened at exactly 8 a.m. Not 7:59. Not 8:01. Exactly 8. Lawrence Caldwell didn't operate on approximate schedules. He operated on precision. He walked in and the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The temperature seemed to drop, the air grew heavier, and everyone sat up a little straighter. He wasn't tall, maybe 5'10", with a lean build and iron gray hair cut in a severe style. He wore a navy suit that fit him like it had been engineered rather than tailored, and his eyes were the color of winter fog. He didn't smile. He didn't make small talk about traffic or weather. He simply walked to the head of the table, placed a slim leather portfolio down, and looked at each of us in turn. Behind him, 2 junior analysts trailed like nervous attendants following a monarch known for sudden executions. "Mr. Caldwell," Arwen practically squealed, jumping out of her chair. She extended her hand, bracelets jangling like wind chimes in a hurricane. "I'm Arwen, so excited to finally meet you. I've been following your fund's sustainability initiatives. Super inspiring work." Caldwell looked at her hand for a full 2 seconds before accepting it. The handshake was brief, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Miss Preston," he said. His voice was dry, like wind blowing through dead leaves. "Your father speaks highly of you." "Oh, Daddy's totally biased," Arwen laughed, tossing her hair. "But seriously, we are so ready to blow your mind today. We're thinking beyond traditional metrics, you know? Holistic growth paradigms." I took a sip of water to hide my expression. Holistic growth paradigms. What in the actual hell did that even mean? Mason beamed like a stage parent at a children's talent show. "Arwen has prepared a presentation that really captures our forward momentum, Lawrence. I think you'll find it refreshing." Caldwell didn't acknowledge Mason. He sat down, opened his portfolio and removed a fountain pen. I have 90 minutes, he said. My team has reviewed your annual filings. I have specific questions regarding your debt-to-equity ratios, your exposure in the commercial real estate sector, and the sustainability of your dividend policy given current cash flow projections. He looked up, his gaze sweeping the room. It passed over Mason, dismissed the trembling associates in the corner and landed on me. He held my gaze for 3 seconds. It wasn't flirtatious or friendly. It was recognition. He saw the exhaustion, the rigid posture, the absence of a smile. He saw a fellow predator sitting in a room full of prey. Then Arwen clapped her hands together. Totally. We can get into the granular stuff later, but first, let's talk about the narrative. She dimmed the lights and clicked her remote. A massive screen illuminated with a slide that said, Synergy, in a font that looked like graffiti spray painted by a distracted teenager. Business, Arwen began, pacing the room with exaggerated hand gestures, is a conversation. And right now our company is shouting into the void. But are we listening? Are we receiving? We're pivoting toward a consumer-centric, eco-forward, digitally native storytelling framework. I watched Caldwell. He hadn't written anything. He was staring at the screen with an expression that fell somewhere between profound boredom and mild physical discomfort. We're launching an influencer partnership campaign, Arwen continued, clicking to the next slide, which showed a collage of social media personalities holding our products. We're calling it Project Resonance. We're projecting a 400% increase in brand emotional connectivity by Q4. Emotional connectivity isn't a financial metric, Caldwell said. He didn't raise his voice. He simply dropped the statement into the room like a stone into still water. Arwen froze. Her smile flickered. Well, I mean brand sentiment. It translates into revenue eventually. Eventually, Caldwell repeated. He turned to Mason. You're requesting $3.5 billion of institutional capital, and your opening pitch is brand sentiment. Mason chuckled nervously. Lawrence, it's about capturing the demographic shift. The younger consumer base. Younger consumers don't control pension funds, Caldwell said flatly. He turned back to Arwen. What is your customer acquisition cost for this Project Resonance compared to your traditional marketing channels? Arwen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She looked at the screen as if the answer might magically appear in the pixels. Well, the data is still emerging because it's organic growth, right? It's not static. It's not organic, I said. The room went silent. Arwen's head whipped around. Mason looked like he wanted to throw something at me. But Caldwell simply turned his chair slightly to face me directly. It's not organic, I repeated, keeping my tone flat and factual. The customer acquisition cost for influencer marketing channels is currently averaging $67 per conversion, which is 23% higher than our direct mail campaigns. However, the lifetime value of those customers is 38% lower because the retention rate is 4 months. Caldwell touched his pen to paper. He wrote something down. Maisie, Arwen hissed, her smile now resembling a grimace of pain. I was getting to that. You don't need to interrupt the flow. There was no flow, Arwen, I thought. There was only a drain and we were circling it at increasing velocity. Continue, Caldwell said to me, completely ignoring Arwen's protest. I hesitated. This was the moment. I could save her. I could give a vague answer, blame market volatility, cite industry trends. That's what a team player would do. That's what the Maisie of 5 years ago would have done. But then I remembered the yard sale comment. I remembered Mason telling me to stay quiet. I remembered 16 years of carrying people who couldn't carry themselves. The retention rate is low, I said, locking eyes with Caldwell, because the product quality in the new vertical was compromised to fund the marketing budget. We reduced R&D spending by 18% to pay for the influencer contracts. Customers purchase once, realize the product is inferior to our legacy line and don't return. Mason made a choking sound. Maisie, that is completely out of context. Is it? Caldwell interrupted. He didn't look at Mason. He kept his eyes on me. Continue. Arwen stood there under the dim light of her synergy slide, slowly realizing that this wasn't a game, and I wasn't a supporting character in her personal narrative. I was holding the script and I was about to read every single page. After I laid out the truth about the R&D cuts, Mason called for what he termed a strategic intermission. His face had gone from its usual tan to an alarming shade of eggplant. "Let's take 15, he said, his voice tight. "Regroup. Refresh. Arwen, let's recalibrate the messaging." He grabbed Arwen by the elbow and practically dragged her into the adjacent break room. Through the glass partition I could see aggressive gesturing and hear muffled voices rising in pitch. It looked like two people trying to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic. I stayed seated. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't apologizing. I had lit the match and I was going to watch what burned. Caldwell stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Miss Grant," he said. "Walk with me. I need to make a call." It wasn't a request. I stood, smoothed my supposedly inadequate blazer and followed him out of the conference room. The associates in the corner watched me leave like I was being led to an execution. The hallway was quiet, carpeted in plush gray that absorbed sound. We walked in silence toward the elevator bank. Caldwell pressed the button but didn't look at his phone. Instead he turned to face me. "How long?" he asked. 16 years, I said. "No," he clarified. "How long has the daughter been in a position of authority?" "For months," I replied. "Since Mason decided he wanted a succession plan that would look good in business magazine profiles." Caldwell nodded slowly, watching the elevator numbers descend. "I've seen this before. Usually in family-owned manufacturing firms in the Midwest. The founder gets old, gets anxious about legacy, promotes the child who thinks business is a TED Talk." He looked at me directly. "You're the only reason the stock price hasn't collapsed yet, aren't you?" "I manage expectations," I said carefully. "And I clean up the messes." "You're doing more than cleaning," Caldwell said. "You're holding up the entire structure." The elevator arrived. The doors opened, revealing a mirrored interior. Caldwell didn't step inside. He simply held the door open with one hand. "Why stay?" he asked. "You could run investor relations for any major firm in the city. Why stay here and let a 26-year-old amateur insult you in front of a multi-billion-dollar prospect?" I looked at my reflection in the elevator mirror. I looked tired, worn down, but there was something sharp in my eyes. Something dangerous. "Because I built this," I said quietly. "I built the relationships with the banks. I structured the debt that kept us afloat. I negotiated the contracts that kept the lights on. They think I'm part of the infrastructure. They forgot that infrastructure is what keeps buildings from collapsing." Caldwell smiled. It was a terrifying expression, like a shark recognizing blood in the water. "I'm not investing," he said. My stomach dropped. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like a physical blow. "However," he continued, "I'm not walking away yet either. I want to see how this plays out. I want to see if there's anything worth salvaging after the collapse." He leaned in slightly. "Let her continue when we go back. Give her enough rope. I want to see if she hangs herself or if she strangles the entire company first." "And if she strangles the company?" I asked. "Then we strip the assets," he said. "But if you demonstrate that there's someone competent in the building, someone who can actually pilot this operation, we might proceed." He released the elevator door. "5 minutes, Maisie. Then the real meeting starts." He stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, my pulse hammering in my ears. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something else. Something that felt like freedom. Caldwell had just given me permission. No, he'd given me a directive. I walked back toward the conference room. I could hear Arwen's voice from the break room, pitched high with indignation. "It's just jealousy, Daddy. She's jealous because I'm young and I have vision, and she's just administrative. She's basically a glorified bookkeeper with a calculator." "I know, sweetheart, I know," Mason was saying. "But we need her for the technical details. Just dazzle him with the vision. Use your charisma. You're a star." Glorified bookkeeper. I paused outside the door. I took a deep breath. I imagined pulling the pin on a grenade. Then I pushed the door open and walked back in. "Ready for round 2? I asked, my voice almost cheerful. Arwen spun around, glaring. "Just sit there and be quiet, Maisie. I'm handling this." "By all means," I said, taking my seat and opening my binder to the section marked Regulatory Compliance Risks. "Dazzle away." When Caldwell returned, he didn't sit immediately. He walked to the window, looked out at the Chicago skyline, then turned his chair so he was facing Arwen directly. "Miss Preston," he said. "Let's move past the marketing. I want to talk about governance structure." Arwen brightened. She thought governance meant company culture. She thought it meant casual Fridays and wellness initiatives. "Oh, absolutely," she beamed, clicking her remote. A slide appeared titled, "Our Tribe." It featured stock photos of diverse people high-fiving in a sunlit park that definitely wasn't anywhere near our actual office. "We believe in horizontal leadership," Arwen said. "We're empowering our team members to be their own entrepreneurs. It's about holistic ownership." "I'm referring to your board composition and audit committee oversight," Caldwell said. "I noticed in your most recent proxy statement that your audit committee chairman is your uncle." Arwen blinked. "Uncle Frank? Yeah, he's great. He's a dentist, but he's really smart with money. He manages his own investment portfolio." The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the ventilation system humming. A dentist. The chairman of the audit committee for a company seeking institutional investment was a dentist. I slowly slid a document across the table. It made a distinct K sound against the polished wood. It was the governance reform proposal I'd drafted 2 years ago, the one Mason had rejected because it would have required removing his relatives from the payroll. "Mr. Caldwell," I said calmly, "if you turn to Section 3 in the packet I just provided, you'll see the proposed risk mitigation strategy regarding board composition. The current structure is familial and non-compliant with standard institutional requirements. We've outlined a transition plan to bring in 4 independent directors within the next fiscal quarter." Caldwell picked up the packet. He flipped to Section 3. He read it silently. Arwen stared at the packet like it was a live explosive. "I didn't authorize that document." "Maisie, why are you distributing unapproved materials?" "Because," I said, still looking at Caldwell. "Mr. Caldwell asked about governance. And Uncle Frank is a dentist is not an answer that secures a check with 10 zeros on it." Mason interjected, his face approaching a dangerous shade of crimson. "Now hold on. Frank is a very shrewd businessman. And Maisie, we haven't agreed to any independent board members." "Then you're not compliant," Caldwell said, closing the packet. He looked at Mason. "You're asking me to deploy pension fund capital. If I take this to my investment committee and tell them the audit chairman fills cavities for a living, they will reject the proposal immediately. And then they will short your stock." Arwen looked at her father. The confidence was draining from her face. "But our culture," she stammered. "We have a meditation room. We have mental health days. You have a $14 million regulatory exposure," I said. "I've documented the potential SEC penalties on page 18. It exceeds your projected annual profit margin." Arwen snatched the packet from Caldwell's hands and flipped to page 18. Her eyes widened. "This is negative. Why would you show him this? You're sabotaging us." "I'm disclosing material risk," I said. "It's called fiduciary duty. Arwen, if we fail to disclose this and he invests and then discovers it later, that's securities fraud. That's federal prison, not minimum security resort prison. Actual prison with jumpsuits that definitely don't come in lime green." Caldwell made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was short and dry. "She's correct," Caldwell said. "She's protecting you from a lawsuit, Miss Preston. You should be grateful." Arwen's face went from pale to flushed. The humiliation was complete. She was being educated in her own conference room by the woman she'd called a glorified bookkeeper. "I need a break," Arwen announced abruptly. Her voice was strained. "I need to check on lunch arrangements." She turned and walked out on her expensive heels. We all knew she wasn't checking on lunch. She was going to cry in the bathroom or call her mother. Mason looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. "You are undermining her," he hissed. "I'm saving your deal, Mason," I replied calmly. Caldwell watched the door close. Then he looked at me. "Keep talking," he said. "Tell me about the debt structure." And for the next 25 minutes, with Arwen crying in the bathroom and Mason sulking in his chair, I did exactly what I was hired to do 16 years ago. I ran the meeting. The debt structuring discussion went flawlessly. Without Arwen there to inject meaningless buzzwords, I walked Caldwell through our capital stack, our credit ratings, our liquidity positions, and our covenant compliance. It was like playing tennis with a professional, fast, precise, no wasted movement. But then Arwen returned. She'd fixed her makeup. Her eyes were still red-rimmed, but she'd reapplied her lip gloss and reconstructed her armor of arrogance. She walked in carrying a tray of artisanal sandwiches that nobody had requested. "Okay," she announced, setting the tray down with excessive force. "Fuel for the brain. Get it? Food for thought." Nobody laughed. As I reached for my water, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Mason sitting 4 feet away from me. "Stop talking. You've made your point. Let Arwen close. She needs this win. If you say one more word about compliance or risk, we're having a very different conversation Monday morning about your employment." I stared at the screen. There it was. The ultimatum. He was willing to destroy the deal, risk federal charges, and torpedo the company's credibility just to protect his daughter's fragile ego. He would fire the only person who knew how to operate this company just so his daughter could wear the title while we crashed. I looked up at Mason. He gave me a tight, warning smile. Then I looked at one of the junior analysts sitting to Caldwell's left. A young woman, maybe 27, sharp eyes, wearing a suit that was professional and understated. Throughout the meeting, she'd been taking notes every time I spoke. He caught my eye. She gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. Then she tapped her pen on her notebook twice. It was a signal. "We see you. We know who's actually running this operation." In that moment, I felt more connection with the strangers across the table, the people who were technically adversaries, than I did with the man I'd worked for 16 years. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Miss Preston," he said to Arwen, "your colleague has explained the debt architecture. I'd like to hear your plan for future revenue streams, specifically how you intend to monetize the new software platform." This was the trap. The software platform didn't exist. It was vaporware, a concept Mason had floated to boost the stock price last quarter. Arwen brightened immediately. "Oh, the platform. It's going to be the Uber of what we do. Fully scalable, AI-driven, blockchain-enabled." She was just reciting words she'd heard on financial news programs. "Who is the lead developer?" Caldwell asked. "We're sourcing talent currently," Arwen said. "But the vision is crystallized." "You don't have a chief technology officer," Caldwell stated. "We have a fractional CTO," Arwen said. "It's very agile." I knew the fractional CTO. It was a freelancer in Poland. We paid $45 an hour to maintain the website. I looked at my phone. The warning from Mason was still glowing on the screen. I looked at Arwen, drowning in her own fabrications. I looked at Caldwell, waiting for me to intervene, to save them, to lie. If I stayed silent, the deal died. If I spoke, I got fired. I took a slow sip of water. I thought about my mortgage. I thought about my retirement account. I thought about 16 years of sacrificed weekends and missed holidays. And then I thought about Uncle Frank the dentist. I put the phone face down on the table. "Actually," I said, breaking the silence, "we don't just lack a CTO. We don't own any proprietary code. The platform is white-labeled from a third-party vendor in India. We don't own the intellectual property." Arwen gasped audibly. "Maisie." Mason slammed his hand on the table. "That is enough. Maisie, leave this room immediately." "Sit down, Mason," Caldwell said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of an anvil. Mason froze. "Excuse me." "I said sit down," Caldwell repeated. "Unless you want me to contact the SEC right now and report you for material misrepresentation during a capital solicitation." Mason sat down. He looked like he was experiencing a medical emergency. Arwen looked like she might actually be sick. "Maisie," Caldwell said, using my first name for the first time, "tell me about the licensing agreement." And I did. I ignored my boss. I ignored his daughter. I laid out the corpse of the company on the table and performed a complete autopsy right there in front of them. For the next hour, it wasn't a pitch meeting. It was a deposition. Caldwell asked questions. I answered them truthfully. Arwen and Mason sat there like two mannequins in a department store window display commemorating corporate failure. Every time I spoke, I could feel my career evaporating. I could visualize my access badge being deactivated, my desk being boxed up, my name being removed from the directory. But it felt liberating. It felt like removing a weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I wasn't spinning anymore. I wasn't polishing anymore. I was just holding up reality and saying, look, this is what's actually here. So, Caldwell said finally, closing his portfolio. To summarize, your marketing strategy is based on purchased engagement. Your audit chairman is a dentist. Your software is rented. And your CEO is suppressing internal risk assessments. That's a somewhat harsh interpretation, Mason croaked. He sounded like he'd aged a decade since breakfast. It's the accurate interpretation, Caldwell said. He looked at Arwen. And you believe buzzwords are a substitute for actual business strategy. Arwen, to her credit or perhaps her delusion, attempted one final play. She stood up, tears forming in her eyes. You're being cruel, she said, her voice breaking. You're just an old man trying to gatekeep. I have a vision. I have followers. You have nothing, Caldwell said. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it like he was reading a weather report. You are an empty suit, Miss Preston. And not even a well-fitted one. Arwen burst into tears. Real, ugly, mascara-running tears. She grabbed her designer handbag and fled from the room. This time Mason didn't chase after her. He just slumped in his chair, staring at the table like it held the answers to where everything went wrong. Caldwell stood. His two analysts stood with him. Thank you for your time, he said to Mason. Mason looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. So, is there any possibility of... We'll be in touch, Caldwell said. The standard non-answer. Then Caldwell turned to me. He extended his hand. Maisie, he said. Thank you for the transparency. It's rare in this industry. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, dry, and respectful. Just doing my job, Mr. Caldwell. For whatever time I have left in it. Not much longer, Mason muttered under his breath. Caldwell heard it. He paused, looked at Mason, then back at me. He didn't say anything else. He simply turned and walked out, his analysts following him like silent shadows. The door closed. I was alone in the room with Mason. The silence was thick with the ghosts of destroyed careers, including my own. Mason slowly turned his head to look at me. His face was a mask of cold rage. You're finished, he whispered. You understand that, right? You're done in this city. I will make sure you never work in finance again. I will sue you for breach of confidentiality. I will destroy you. I stood up. I gathered my binders. I stacked them with deliberate care. Mason, I said, looking him directly in the eye. I didn't breach confidentiality. I prevented fraud. There's a difference. And if you sue me, I will depose Arwen. I will put her on a witness stand and ask her to explain what EBITDA stands for under oath. Do you want that? Mason's mouth opened, then closed. His face turned purple. I'm going to my office to pack, I said. Send HR down with the paperwork. I walked out. My legs were shaking, but my head was high. I had just detonated my career, but I'd saved my integrity. Or so I thought. I didn't know the game wasn't over. I didn't know that Lawrence Caldwell hadn't just left the building. He was making a phone call. My office was a corner space with a view of Lake Michigan. I had fought for this view. I had earned it, crisis by crisis, deal by deal. Now it looked like someone else's room. I pulled a cardboard box from the storage closet, the universal symbol of corporate termination. I started packing the framed photo of my rescue dog Luna. The glass award from 2017. The emergency chocolate stash in my drawer. My hands were shaking. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a wave of nausea. What had I just done? I was 50 years old. I had a mortgage. I had bills. Who hires a whistleblower? Who hires the woman who sinks her own ship? There was a knock at the door. It was Abigail from H. Abigail and I used to get drinks on Friday evenings. Now she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was holding a manila envelope. Maisie, she said, her voice strained. Mason asked me to deliver this. The termination paperwork? I asked, dropping a stapler into the box. Administrative leave pending investigation, she corrected. It's standard procedure before formal termination. He wants you escorted out. Security is coming. Security. I laughed. It was a harsh, jagged sound. I've worked here for 16 years, Abigail. You think I'm going to steal office supplies? I'm sorry, she whispered. He's furious. He's breaking things upstairs. Arwen is hysterical. Arwen is always hysterical, I muttered. 2 security guards appeared behind Abigail. They were new, contracted personnel. They looked at me like I was a threat. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we need your badge and your laptop." I handed them over. I felt naked without them. My identity stripped away in seconds. "I'm ready," I said, picking up my box. We did the walk of shame. Past the cubicles where junior staff pretended not to see me. Past the break room where someone had burned popcorn. Past the reception desk where the receptionist looked like she might cry. They escorted me to the elevator, down to the lobby, through the glass doors and onto the sidewalk. It was raining. Of course it was raining. The universe apparently has a flair for cliché. I stood on the wet pavement holding my box, rain ruining my supposedly inadequate blazer, thinking about how I was going to explain this to my sister. "Yeah, Rachel. I got fired because I refused to let a 26-year-old nepotism case commit securities fraud." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. It was probably Mason calling to add one more threat to his collection. But it wasn't Mason. It was a number I didn't recognize. A 212 area code. New York. I balanced the box on my knee and answered. "This is Maisie." "Maisie, it's Lawrence Caldwell." I nearly dropped the phone into a puddle. "Mr. Caldwell. Where are you?" "I'm on the sidewalk," I said. "I've just been escorted out of the building." "Good," he said. "That saves me the trouble of getting you a visitor pass." I didn't leave. "Turn around." I turned. Through the rain-streaked glass of the building's massive lobby I saw him. He was standing there, phone to his ear, looking directly at me. "Come back inside, Maisie," he said. "I can't," I replied. "They took my badge. I'm persona non grata." "Not anymore," he said. "I just purchased the debt. Your company has a bridge loan that matures next week." A messy little detail Mason forgot to mention, but my analysts located it. I just acquired the note from the bank. Technically, as of 7 minutes ago, I am the primary creditor of this organization. Which means I control the lights, I control the doors, and I control Mason. I stared at him through the glass, rain dripping down my face. "Come back inside," he repeated. "We have a meeting to finish. And you're underdressed for the weather." I walked back through the revolving doors, box still in my arms, rain dripping onto the marble. The guards who'd just thrown me out stepped forward, until Caldwell raised a finger. "She's with me." They backed off. "Leave the box," he said. "You won't need it." We rode the elevator in comfortable silence. "Why?" I asked. "This company has good bones," he said. "Just a termite problem in the executive suite. You're the exterminator." Back in Mason's office, he dropped his phone mid-rant. Arwen sat on the sofa, mascara smudged. "What's she doing here?" Mason barked. "Security works for me now," Caldwell said, perched on the desk. "I bought your bridge loan. You're in covenant default, starting with that dentist on your audit committee. I'm calling it due." Mason paled. "I don't have $22 million. Then convert it to equity." He stepped down. "Arwen's fired for cause." Arwen shrieked. "You can't fire me. My father owns this company." "Not anymore," Caldwell said. Then to me, "I'm nominating you as interim CEO." Arwen sneered. "Her? She wears discount suits." I leaned in. "It's a consignment boutique, and my worth isn't measured by price tags." I turned to Mason. "Clear your office by 5. I've got damage to undo." Monday 7:45 I sat in the corner office. Clean, quiet mine. Abigail hovered nervously. "Call me Maisie," I said. "And get me board candidate resumes by 3. In the desk drawer, a note from Caldwell. "Competence is the only currency that matters. You're wealthy in the ways that count. P.S. Burn the synergy slides." I laughed. Outside, Lake Michigan stretched clear under a post-storm sky that I picked up the phone. "Restore R&D's budget. And order lunch. Nothing artisanal. Just real food." The numbers were ugly. The work hard. But for the first time in 16 years, I wasn't cleaning up a mess, that I was building something that would last. I sipped my coffee. It tasted like victory. And my suit looked absolutely fine. The end.